one that can see.
Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. Today's topic will be the topic of teens going their own way. And it's a topic that's already been covered by a couple content producers. The article comes out of Australia. And the basic plot line of the article is that MGTOW is now trickling down, so to speak, to younger generations of males. It's no longer just adult men deciding to go their own way, but males as young as 15 are now starting to see the futileness of relationships and marriage. In the article, they quote someone self-identified as MGTOW, as saying essentially, MGTOW is a statement about living life your way rather than trying to make a woman happy or being a slave to cultural expectations. This isn't about a specific rule book, more a mindset, although there are purists in the movement who are the most extreme and avoid women entirely. There's a growing number of men who've had enough of feminism and enough of being told that they have to work for the greater good, which doesn't actually exist. I would disagree with, it kind of paints MGTOW in the light of being a movement, which we've said on this program, and I know others have said in their content time and time again, that this is not a movement. This is individuals deciding what's best for them and pursuing to that end. But it goes on to say in the article, younger men are shunning relationships. Tom is 15. Tom is 15 from New South Wales, and he self-identifies as a teen going his own way. They quote him as saying, "It's probably not true of all women, but I've got the feeling that women are dangerous. Maybe the men around me have just had bad experiences," he told the article. He goes on to say, "It's scary being a teenage boy. I'm not sure how it's all meant to fit together in the future. Last year, my uncle lost everything because his wife of 40 years decided she didn't love him anymore. Just like that, she randomly got up and left. It got nasty and he lost everything, his house, cars, and loads of his money. There's no way I'm ever getting married." I would stop it right there and say, where he says it's probably not true of all women, yes, it is, AWOLT. And then it goes on to talk about how, obviously teenage boys look at other males in their life, particularly those that are older and have lived more life, to gather some perspective on what life's all about. I guess this young man also saw his older brother go through the traumatic experience of a false rape allegation when he had a messy breakup with the girl he was dating. He goes on to say, "My older brother, who's 20, was dating a girl for a few months. She turned really nasty. It turned into a really nasty breakup and made a string of allegations to the police that made me suspicious of women too. My brother's a good guy. Why should she be able to just say what she wants, accuse him of anything, and then get on with her life like that? It doesn't seem fair to me. I'm not sure what rights I have. Maybe none." And that's kind of what it seems like anymore, is that you really don't have any rights. And the younger generation is seeing this a lot quicker than a lot of us did. For years, you're told America, land of the free, home of the brave. And we say on this program, you're free to do as you're told. Because a lot of the rights that you think you have been eroded and they're no longer there. And maybe you never really had them to begin with. But of course, that's a different topic for a different video. Then the article goes on to ask the question. Of course, I notice in here they don't, when he talked about the wife divorcing the uncle, they didn't really address that, which is not really all that surprising. But what you would think that when the young man was talking about his brother getting hemmed up in a false rape allegation, you would have thought that they would have addressed that particular vignette, because of how, of what a reality it really is. I mean, we're told all the time that it's a very rare instance of that happening. But yet there's all these news stories and articles and everything else on it. And yet they don't address that at all. They don't condemn that at all. They don't say that that's that's a terrible thing that men have to deal with, and particularly young men. They go on to just kind of gloss over that and say, so what has gone wrong? Why are young people not seeing happy futures with a partner or even setting a goal for family life? Well, a lot of that could be the predominance of divorce that we have seen over the past couple decades. I mean, it seemed like when I was in school, it was a rare thing. It was kind of a taboo thing to come from a divorced family. It was not, as prevalent. There was not the preponderance of that as much as there seems to be now. But now it's just a commonplace, everyday thing. I mean, I think I know more people who come from a divorced home than I do whose parents have stayed together. Okay, and then they quote this author and psychologist Meredith Fuller as saying, none of these views surprise me because I hear them all the time. Each time it strikes me as incredibly sad. We have a younger generation who are chaotic and rudderless. They have no role models, no mentors, and no sense of where they fit into society. Well, again, a lot of that goes back to the advent of no-fault divorce, the concerted effort to get the father out of the family, and the job situation. I mean, for most people, the reality of it is that most of the good jobs are gone. And so it's hard to establish oneself. I mean, especially if you think as a younger person, a lot of the reason that a lot of younger men aren't getting married isn't because they're MGTOW, but they simply can't afford it. I mean, and what woman, of course, is going to be interested? I mean, my friend, who I've mentioned on the program here before, he still lives at home. He works 2 or 3 different jobs. He doesn't have a career path, but his focus is on meeting that girl that's going to, give him that support and that unconditional care and love for him. What he doesn't understand is that he's the statistical likelihood of meeting somebody like that is so infinitesimal that it may as well not be a reality at all. But he doesn't seem to understand that the way that hypergamy works, the way that women's nature works, he's never going to find a girl that's going to take him seriously until he moves out and has a career. Because until he does that, in their minds, he has nothing to offer them. And yet, she goes on to say, it's crucial that we encourage our children to find a mentor, a teacher, a relative, or someone who teaches them sport. Someone who they can communicate with, talk with honestly, and learn skills about healthy relationships. She goes on to say, both sexes have different challenges. We've lost sight of that. We're stuck in a gender war, and it's harming our children. It's become very narcissistic, selfish, and a sense of entitlement is running rife. And that's pretty much, she's described female nature to a T there. Narcissistic, selfish, with a sense of entitlement. She says both sexes have different challenges, which I completely disagree with. I don't know of any challenges that any modern Western woman has. I mean, the world is their oyster. What we've lost sight of is not that both sexes have different challenges. What we've lost sight of is something that we never had sight of to begin with, and that is the challenges for men. The gender war, it's just a smokescreen. There is no gender war. It's pretty clear who the victor is in 90% of the cases or more. But what's been lost sight of, again, is that no one is willing to or wants to admit that nobody gives a shit about men. And so they're surprised when men say, well, fuck it. The society doesn't care about me. The society has nothing to offer me. So why would I offer anything to the society? She goes on to say we need to get a focus back on having respect for other human beings, for partnerships, loving bonds, and trust, rather than simply seeing what you can get out of a relationship. Right there. Okay, if that's what we need to do, well, then somebody ought to let the women of this country know that. Because it has been females primarily, predominantly, that have a sense of self-entitlement, that are disrespectful to other people, that do not respect partnerships, that cannot even begin to bond or trust, but rather are in these relationships for what they can get out of it. I don't think that describes men at all. I don't think that describes men's attitudes about relationships for the most part. What that describes is female hypergamy. What that describes is default law. What that is female nature. She goes on to say, children need to learn that sense of give and take. They need to be taught about delayed gratification. Life is not all about self. It's not all about making yourself happy instantly and constantly. It's not about running away from the opposite sex. It's about learning to communicate effectively and genuinely caring. And that last paragraph right there just seems completely aimed at men. Especially with the running away from the opposite sex thing. We're not running away from the opposite sex. We've simply, as Paul Proteus stated in his last video, rather than running away, we're walking towards our own selves. We're walking towards discovering who we really are. And this whole delayed sense of gratification and life is not all about self. I mean, again, this is stuff that need to be said to the women of this country. This is a female issue. This is not a male issue. I would disagree with the line in here. It says, life is not about making yourself happy instantly and constantly. Again, that's a shot at guys, because it has been our lot in life to be the producers, to be the supporters and the protectors, and to serve and sacrifice ourselves for society. I think that we have learned those lessons more well than you could ever know. It's been the women that have not been asked, that nothing of them has been asked at all. And so again, I come to the point, I have to be quite honest with you. It's interesting that younger men are tapping into this and seeing this earlier on and earlier as time marches on. I don't think that it will change anything. I think we're still going to be looking at the same issues that we are now, because I think that you can know this stuff cognitively, and I've said this before, but I think you have to experience some of these heartaches and some of the suffering and some of the downfalls to really internalize it. As Barbarossa said, a lot of us are one blowjob away from going back to the plantation. Imagine being, 15, 16-year-old and not really having that much relationship experience with women or having any physical encounters with women. It's easy to intellectually make an assent to accepting a lot of the tenets of MGTOW and to see the necessity and the safety and protection that comes from avoiding women. But it's a completely different matter when you've never been confronted with those temptations. So I think a lot of those guys, they may be MGTOW well on into their 20s and 30s and may stick to it, but I think some of them will certainly, the majority of them will probably fall by the wayside when they start to get older and get into relationships and get more experience with women. But, it's difficult to internalize a truth that you only know on an academic level or on a cognitive level, and you don't know, in a real world sense. But, again, it just shows that the spread of the truth is getting out there. And at the end of the day, of course, the only person that you can worry about is you. You're going your own way. But I agree with Paul's latest video. This isn't a movement about walking away from women. This isn't a movement, period. This is a self-discovery. And it's funny that he came out with this video when he did, because it's something I've been thinking a lot about, and he made the comment, a lot of content producers, when they really start to discover themselves and they start to discover what it is they really want to do, they make videos and content less and less. And I have noticed that. It's not that there's a lot of things you can say about MGTOW and the tenets within MGTOW, but at some point you're just repeating yourself. At some point you can only say so much about it until, people either get it and accept it or they don't. Of course, there's always new people coming to MGTOW and learning about MGTOW, but you can only say so many things about it until you've, reached your end on your ability to get the point across any more than you already have. And so I think that that's an important part. I think it's an important point that this, first and foremost, is about discovering yourself and what it is you really want out of life and who it is you really want to be in life. And it's not really about walking away from anything or shielding yourself from something, but rather taking that risk and discovering who and what you really are. That's all we've got today for the Days of Thunder. As always, you're free to do as you're told.